I'd probably take Mike LaFleur right now, Alex.
I was going to say, I didn't realize some of the other options that were out there. I have come way off that take based on who some of these interviews have been.
We're going to get into the offensive coordinator search for the Patriots here in a second. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Cat 22, going to be with you for the next hour plus. We got some leeway today because unfortunately we're not preparing for any sort of game or anything right now. So we got some leeway today.
Let's tell this is going to be our time slot for the most part for the rest of the off, at least right through the draft.
Yes, that's the hope.
That's not the big announcement, but
that's not the big announcement.
I know we've been jumping around. People on Twitter are always asking. I feel bad because people want consistency, right? They want their schedule. This is going to be it for the next couple months at least. This is going to be when we're doing the show.
Yep, 2 p.m. And also on YouTube. We're going to be
on YouTube. Yep.
I know people like the video version, so we're going to be on YouTube, Patriots.com, and on the Patriots YouTube channel for those that like the video. We're going to get into the big announcement. You want to do it now.
I want to do it now because I want to break it down.
I know, but I want to wait to the end of the show because that's how you get people to listen to the entire show.
That's good radio. I'm supposed to be the radio guy.
Right,
that's good radio. That's fair.
I can't believe I'm telling you this, right?
I'm just all jacked up about it. I'm very excited.
I'm excited about it too, but we're going to get into that. I want to start with the coordinator search, and I said it on Unfiltered. I'll repeat my take for people that just listen to us here. I'm concerned about some of the names that I'm hearing. And the main reason why I am concerned is that the number one thing that I wanted them to check off in this search and in this hire was experience. That was the number one thing I cared about. Experience running an NFL offense, calling plays in an NFL offense, working with quarterbacks in the NFL. Experience. I think that last year, one of the biggest issues that you had, along with maybe just the overall knowledge on that side of the football, but I think one of the bigger issues that you had was that Matt Patricia was a first-time play caller with a young quarterback learning that role on the fly. And I understand...
With no quarterbacks coach as
well. I understand that Keenan McCardell and Sean Jefferson and Adrian Clem, those guys grew up on offense. They played offense, they grew up in offense, and they are way more experienced in terms of their NFL exposures to the offensive side of the ball than Matt Patricia ever was. So in that respect, they have a lot more experience. They have NFL resumes for offensive coaches, no doubt about it. But I look at this situation and I say, if the guys that they're bringing in are, and we're going to break down each one of them individually too, but just as a big picture takeaway, the guys that they're bringing in, if this is, they're bringing them in to actually interview them to be a part of the staff that they're putting together for Bill O'Brien, or they're putting together, even though I wouldn't love it, but if they're putting it together for Doug Marrone or something like, then I can understand the method to the madness. But if you're just going to hand the keys to the Patriots offense in 2023 over to Sean Jefferson, who has been coaching under Cliff Kingsbury, who is the offense in Arizona, calls the plays, it's his system, it's his game, I have hesitations about that. And I wouldn't have the same hesitations, like let's say that it was Zach Robinson that they're bringing in.
Sure.
Because Zach Robinson has played quarterback, and Zach Robinson fits that mold of former NFL quarterback. He's the Kevin O'Connell, right? Like he fits that new age Ken Dorsey, that what's going on around the league. These guys, I like that they're outside the box a little bit. I like that they're not necessarily names that all of us maybe guessed, or maybe names that have been, it's not like Chad O'Shea, right? It's not all names like that. I know they've played with Belichick or were related somehow to Belichick in some way, but they're not an O'Shea. They're not like somebody that's just like that, right? That's entrenched in the Belichick way of thinking. So I like that element of it, but I'm very concerned about the experience factor and giving a first-time play caller another shot here next year.
So I think we have the exact same take. I'm just looking at a glass half full. You're looking at a glass half empty. Shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker.
It's pretty shocking.
Sean Jefferson is one of the best wide receivers coaches in the leagues. Calvin Johnson, who knows a thing or two about the position.
Because coaching Calvin Johnson to a Hall of Fame career Is that I'm supposed to give him credit for
Listen,
that?
he was Calvin Johnson's wide receivers coach for the first 6 years of his career, and Calvin Johnson came from a triple option system in college. You're going to tell me a guy coming from a triple option system didn't need a little bit of help along the way? He did that all on his own in that organization that was a complete
nobody does
mess.
it all on its own.
That's my point.
But look, are we going to take Randy Moss's wide receiver coach and say, "Oh wow, look at the great job he did with," or Keenan McCardell with Justin Jefferson?
But here you don't put any stock into that fact that he coached that guy.
Very little.
All right, I put some in, and with McCardell,
it would be more impressive to me. Let's take McCardell for example.
Right.
They have some younger receivers. Like if he had fixed Jalen Reagor. That would have been more
how about
impressive
this?
to me.
He worked with Stephon Diggs in Maryland. McCardell.
Okay, I mean,
here's my point. Here's my point. They have talked to people who have, and to what extent they were part of the development, we can debate. We don't really know. But we're around the development of some really impressive wide receivers.
But this is like this.
Just listen.
All right.
2 of the 4 guys we know they've interviewed come from wide receiver backgrounds.
Yeah.
I am totally with you on the fact that I want a guy who's called plays before. I want a guy who's quarterback focused. I want a guy who's been a head coach before, so he has that sort of reputation. So I still take Bill O'Brien over Keenan McCardell or over Sean Jefferson. But the fact they're even doing those interviews, and I'm with you, if you can get one of those guys here as the wide receivers coach, and you got to give him some sort of bump,
right? But
let's call it wide receivers coach / passing game coordinator, right? It tells me they are serious about changing the way they do things at the wide receiver position, which is something they need to do. We've talked about this a lot, about how they need that true number one, and neither one of us are exactly sure, and the class is part of this. But we're not exactly sure that going into the class is the way that they're going to do that. They have to go the expensive route, trade for a guy, give him a new contract. I still think even if they brought in one of those guys, that's the route they should go. But it tells me that they are serious about changing the approach at the wide receiver position. That is encouraging. It doesn't mean I think McCardell or Jefferson should be the number one candidate. I don't. I still think it should be O'Brien. And even honestly with Adrian Clem,
yeah.
First of all, Oregon's offense last year was how it performed versus how it should have performed. And maybe this isn't as much on Clem, but again, he was in the building for this. Bo Nix, by the time he was done at Auburn, was a complete mess. Seemed unsalvageable. Goes to Oregon, gets in the Heisman conversation. Now, Adrian Clem wasn't the one coaching up the quarterback, but that was a massive quarterback turnaround, and he was in some of those meetings. He was on the staff that did it. I also think, you talk about development, their first-round pick needs to be a tackle. We both agree on this. You need an offensive line coach, an experienced guy, to help that guy along. So I still think Bill O'Brien's number one candidate. I wish they were talking to some more people with quarterback backgrounds, a quarterback equivalent of a guy like Adrian Clem or a guy like Keenan McCardell. But I do like that they are bringing those sorts of people with that sort of background into the building to talk to. That, to me, is massive because that's what this staff, outside of Troy Brown, didn't have last year. That
so, again,
player's viewpoint.
I come back to that if Adrian Clem is coming here as the offensive line coach and Keenan McCardell is coming here as the wide receivers and pass game coordinator, that's a totally different conversation.
Right, so this is what, again, we're saying the same thing, we're just viewing it differently.
I need the guy at the top.
Tagline of the show. I do too.
I need the guy at the top. I need the guy that is going to come in and that is going to, people are going to look around and look at him and see and say, that guy knows what he's doing. Right? This guy has experience. This guy has knowledge. This guy everything makes sense. We are all on the same page and we understand what the goal is here on offense and what the system is and all those types of things. I think it's great that your wide receiver point, I think, is a fair one. And I wonder, with all these interviews of wide receivers coaches, what this means for Troy Brown's future with the team. I wonder if that's a spot that they look at and say, we're not coaching this well enough here and we need a total new perspective. And along those lines, I like the idea that as we kind of get into who these people really are, that this is going to offer some fresh perspective, from a conceptual standpoint or a schematic standpoint, where McCardell is in that West Coast Shanahan tree. That's the type of coach that he is, not just with Kevin O'Connell, but with Nathaniel Hackett, with Jay Gruden, with some other coaches that he's been under,
Right.
offensive coordinators and head coaches that he's been under. He's been coaching in the West Coast Shanahan style system. So that suggests that he would probably run something that resembles that. And we've talked
Right.
about this a lot, about the Patriots potentially going in that direction. We're throwing out names over the last
Can we
couple-
throw some breaking news in here real quick?
Yes.
I mean, it's sort of we knew. According to Ian Rappaport, the Patriots have officially now interviewed Bill O'Brien.
So I think this is what was happening, and I'm glad that we got this while we were on the air. First of all, I'm excited. That's great news. But second of all, this is what I think is happening, because there's a report out there, and I don't know how true it is, so I don't want to be married to it, but there's a report out there that Bill Belichick had some sort of meeting of the minds with Doug Marrone, right? And Doug Marrone was somebody that he checked in with just to get his perspective on some of the offensive coaches, younger coaches around the league in the NFL, who's with New Orleans right now, Doug Marrone is. And now they go and they interview McCardell, they interview Sean Jefferson, they interview Adrian Clem. When I look at what they're doing here, I think they're putting together a staff. I think they're putting together a staff, and then they've interviewed all these other guys. They're getting all these other guys in the building and on the know. And now here comes Bill O'Brien to interview.
To tie it all together.
Tie it all together. And if
So now can we go back to my take about...
It would be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's where I was coming from the jump. So I'm glad that you brought your perspective on it, because I don't want to come at it from a negative angle 100%, because I think that that's a great thing. And if I had to put my hat in a ring here, a Bill O'Brien, Sean Jefferson duo is where I would love to see them go.
Okay. Why Jefferson over McCardell?
Because I like the spread better for Mac Jones than I like the West Coast.
Okay.
I understand that you look out in San Francisco and you see what Brock Purdy's doing in that system, and you say, well, why not us, right? Why can't we do that? I think in order to really, truly be able to run that system, you need to be, your last name needs to either be Shanahan or McVay, right? Like there's only a handful of guys that I fully trust installing that kind of scheme. Now, other guys have, LaFleur and Arthur Smith is touched in that category. What McCardell I think does a little bit more of that, maybe, or what the Vikings, they're more like Norv Turner West Coast, right? So it's not quite as
So
Shanahan.
that's the thing. Like it's their own. Like they didn't have Cousins going out, moving all over the place.
So they do half boot with Cousins, where
Right.
like it's a boot, but it's not as elongated as like a full on bootleg.
So that's the thing. I look at what
phrase in there was great.
I look at what Cousins did this past season.
Yeah.
I don't think that that's out of the question for Mac Jones. Like
No.
those sorts of. So, I would take either one. I'm not really sure which way I'd go, McCardell or I guess the interesting thing about Sean Jefferson is he has had that associate head coach tag.
Right.
So maybe he has a little more of that experience in that regard. Also, maybe it makes him a little harder to get though if it's not the OC job.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're not. McCardell's not going to go full Shanahan.
No, I don't know if I'll necessarily go full Shanahan.
And also, do they have the speed to run that sort of spread? Like, which branch, which direction, in terms of those two offenses you just laid out, requires less personnel change? And they need personnel change on offense one way or the other.
I think that they could run Bill O'Brien's 2011 offense tomorrow.
Okay.
I do.
But you're talking about them running McCardell's or Jefferson's.
In terms of that, so the reason why I like the Jefferson combo better with O'Brien is because I think he brings some of that Kingsbury into what they're already doing with the Alabamification.
So you like the marriage of what Jefferson, what the Cardinals are running.
I just think that makes more sense because I think they're speaking a similar language.
Okay.
At that point, but I look at that 2011, and it's beyond 2011. I think people hear that and they think of the two tight end offense, right? I mean, and that's natural, and it's definitely a part of it. And I know you have two tight ends here that you're paying a lot of money to that you hope you're going to get more out of. But I just look at it too, just the way that I think what they were trying to do last year was they were trying to put Mac in the gun. They were trying to spread the field. And it was too volatile, right?
Yeah.
We've been over this a million times. It was either there was turnovers, there was issues on first and second down with efficiency, and there was big plays where there was moments, but it wasn't consistent enough. I think what you can get out of a guy like Bill O'Brien coming in is that you can have something that's a little bit more efficient. And that's what that 2011 offense was.
Right.
That 2011 offense was not necessarily a 60-yard touchdown every single time they stepped on the field, right? That was an efficient spread pace type of system.
And we've gone through the numbers on this about the Patriots' ability to move the ball on non-explosive plays and how that was such an issue in 2022. O'Brien's a guy, like you said, is going to fix that. I know we don't really do this on this show, but Evan, if you'll allow me here, because this is interesting. Sure. We've got one more tweet here from Ian Rappaport. So he just reported O'Brien has interviewed, past tense. The Patriots have interviewed. And then he added with this literally a minute ago. He quote tweets Josina Anderson's tweet from yesterday.
Yeah.
Saying McCardell will interview on Thursday, which is today. Rappaport a minute ago. The Patriots aren't done interviewing, but they may be by tomorrow. They may be done by tomorrow, which would be Friday. So
are we going to find out Bill O'Brien's the offensive coordinator by tomorrow at 5 o'clock? That's the question.
That seems to suggest that McCardell's the last interview.
Right.
And if they still want to talk to him after interviewing O'Brien, does that suggest they want McCardell?
I don't know.
I could be reading too much into it.
Right. What it comes down to is what I keep.
But I think you're
repeating.
Right. Do you think, is this it? Is this the list? McCardell, Jefferson, Clem, O'Brien, Caley. Are those the candidates?
I think that's the staff next year. I think they want. I know Sean Jefferson and McCardell aren't both going to be here, but
also we don't know that Caley's going to be here.
I think that they are. I think they would ideally like to retain Caley, and I think that's why they gave him the interview, was as kind of a goodwill gesture of, we're going to put your name in the ring, right? We're gonna try to give you that. But I think the biggest thing is that you look at this, and I think that this is actually, on top of the fact that we're also trying, I think, to get some fresh perspectives and some new ideas and some new life into this coaching staff, which is important, especially on offense. I also think that they're trying to set up some sort of longevity with it as well, where if Bill O'Brien gets the job next year and he's the coordinator in 2023 and he coaches his butt off and Mac Jones has a great season and the Patriots are a top 10 offense again, Alex, I mean, you know as well as I do, he's going to have head coaching offers.
Right.
So when he gets those head coaching offers, well, now Bill O'Brien has had Sean Jefferson on the staff with him this year and he's groomed him. Right. And now Sean Jefferson just takes the keys, and he might not be somebody that is as much of a flight risk. Right. Like he might not be someone that's gone after a season or two. He might be able to be here for an extended period of time. So, again, I come back to, if all of these other interviews, the Clems, the Jeffersons, the McCardells of the world, were all because Bill O'Brien handed them a short list and said, this is what I think I would like my staff to look like if we had an ideal world, and they go out and they start to make connections with those guys. Then Bill O'Brien comes over the top. They get the guys that they can get. Maybe they don't get all of them, right? But they get a couple of them. They get one of them. They get two of them, and then they go from there. The biggest one, along with, I love your point about the receivers. I think that's very valid.
Yeah.
Offensive line coach. Like that, I think, is a massive, massive thing.
Yes.
Now, Doug Marrone is an offensive line coach. He's coached on Bill O'Brien's staff before. They have a very, very deep-rooted relationship. I don't know what Doug Marrone's situation is in New Orleans in terms of contract, and it would be a lateral move, and maybe it's offensive line coach and run game coordinator, right? Like maybe you put that
right.
title on there, so it's not technically a lateral move. But I think that's another one that's a big spot. So maybe Doug Marrone and Adrian Clem are the finalists to be offensive line coach here next year on Bill O'Brien's staff, right? Like maybe that's what they're looking at. If that's what they end up doing, then I am fully on board with it. I would love it.
And I don't know, can they get Marrone as one of those, like, I think it's his, oh no, he is the offensive line coach with the Saints. Can they get him as one of those, like, offensive consultant coaches? Like, wasn't that Brett Bielema's role when he was here on defense?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have a title, right? He was just like a defensive consultant.
I think he did eventually, but I understand what you're saying. It's,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's kind of like the quality control, but a little bit above that.
It's the NFL version of that. Yeah, he was the consultant to the head coach. That was his title in 2018. and he mainly worked with the defense.
Right, then he went to defensive
Bielema,
line, right?
And then he was the defensive line coach in 2019. So could they get, where Adrian Clem is your offensive line coach and Doug Marrone is just this other guy who's around with some title, because it is still a young staff. If that, you do have Bill O'Brien, but beyond him, it's a young staff, and just having another, I don't want to say another adult in the room because it implies the other guys aren't adults, but a guy who's been there, done that. Yeah, another experienced voice. This has been a huge take of mine all offseason, Evan, is there's a lot of focus on the offensive coordinator, and there should be, and rightfully so. But a lot of the times, and this is what we do on this show that doesn't get done on other shows. Other shows, they got other stuff to get to. They want to get to the glitz and the glam and whatever. And they say, all right, well, you get the new offensive coordinator. Everything's fixed. Move on. Getting the offensive coordinator is big. But there was that great piece on NFL Network last week, I think. I sent it to you, about Ivan Fears and Dante Scarnecchia.
Yeah.
And how impactful they were. They were here for McDaniels had been the quarterback's coach here for a decade, and then going back to his first stint. He's no longer here.
Right.
It's not just the offensive coordinator. They used to have one of, if not the best positional coaching staff groups in the NFL. Between McDaniels, Scar's obviously the highlight, Fears.
Offensive staff. I would be hard.
Because they still had Dayball too,
so
then, right?
So I'll name the names in a second.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about like Bill Walsh's staff or Don Coryell's staff or some of the legendary offensive minds, but I would be hard pressed to find a better offensive coaching staff in NFL history than the 2016 Patriots. Josh McDaniel, offensive coordinator, Dante Scarnecchia, offensive line coach, Ivan Fears, running backs coach, Brian Daboll, tight ends, Chad O'Shea, wide receivers.
Who's the quarterback's coach? Oh, it was McDaniels. Yeah. Was Shaplinski here for that?
No. So they had some other lower guys were already there, right?
Okay.
Some guys.
I think Cayley was.
Yeah, Cayley was like an offensive
assistant.
Yeah, Mike Pellegrino is obviously the cornerbacks, with a C, coach. That he was a low-level assistant at that point in time. But just to think about that staff.
Right.
And Daboll might end up being the best one out of all of them.
Yeah.
Right? And he was just the tight ends coach.
Should be
at the
coach
time.
of the year.
Unbelievable.
He should be coach of the year this year, I'm saying. The point being, look, you're not necessarily going to get back to that level.
Right.
You're just, like you said, it's so absurd. But the Patriots did this great job over 20 years of there were always guys in the pipeline. Like, they went from Cornell to Dean Pease, but like Dean Pease was an assistant under Cornell. And then Matt Patricia was an assistant under Pease, right? And then Brian Flores was an assistant under Patricia. And there's just this pipeline. And you kind of had it on the offensive side of the ball, too, where you had McDaniels work under Weiss, and then you had O'Brien work under McDaniels. That pipeline sort of stopped on the offensive side. I think on the defensive side of the ball, it still exists. I like their staff on the defensive side of the ball.
I do, too.
I really do. But
I think DeMarcus Covington, he's going to coordinate the Senior Bowl.
Sneaky, up and coming,
right. He's one of those guys that they have in the pipeline on defense.
We obviously know how much they love Gerard Mayo based on the statement last week, right? But I think that getting to bring it back to the point, this is not that offensive staff. The pipeline has dried up. They need to reinvigorate not just the offensive coordinator job, but the positional coaches as well, because those guys are so much more important than people realize. And again, we look at this list, it's sort of like we just talked about. And I actually just typed it out here, just the list of interviewees. And you've alluded to this. O'Brien, McCardell, Jefferson, Clem, Cayley. That's a staff.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a staff. So get the offensive coordinator hired. But after that, we're not done with the coaching staff. Who's the three big ones? Who's the QB coach? Who's the wide receivers coach? Who's the offensive line coach? Got to get those answered. And even if Bill O'Brien is the quarterback's coach on top of being the offensive coordinator, which he was his first stint here, and McDaniels was at the end of his time here. Yeah.
McDaniels was for a decade.
Forever, yeah.
And then Jed Fish, I think, stopped that streak, and then Bo Hardegree comes in as well.
So here's in 2021, McDaniels was the quarterback's coach. Hardegree was listed as an offensive assistant, but it was pretty clear just watching
that he was working.
That he was the assistant quarterback's coach.
Yeah.
Even if O'Brien is the OC and quarterback's coach, he's got to go do other offensive coordinator stuff at times. Go get that assistant quarterbacks coach, whoever I don't have a name, unfortunately. It would help this take if I had a name.
Yeah.
Name a former quarterback who's in coaching or wants to get into coaching. That's just going to live on Mac's hip. And Bill O'Brien's going to be there, and he's going to be a big part of it. But when Bill's got to go meet with the other coaches to come up with the game plan, Mac's still got a coach there with him. I think that Bo Hardegree was an understated loss when he went to Vegas with Josh McDaniels.
Yeah, I mean, McDaniels has him and Shaplinsky on the staff.
Filling that role would be big.
Okay, let's take Patty's call. If you want to call in and give your take, ask us a question, it's 855-PATS-500. You can also email us at webradio@patriots.com. And then let's answer Patty's question or take his call. Then we're going to get into his positional needs, and we'll circle back to this at the end and make sure we button this up. But
we got to do the announcement, too.
Oh, and the announcement, of course. Patty, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey.
I can't take credit for this question. I think it was either Russ Goldman or Steve Balestrieri that sort of had this hypothesis. But if you're Belichick, you're Kraft, you're the ownership group, do you put all your chips on Nick Caley to hopefully have him stay? And let's say O'Brien signs a 2-year contract. You have him out of the contract, but have Nick Caley as that offensive coordinator in waiting.
So you're saying you would give Nick Caley assurances that he would be the offensive coordinator eventually to keep him on the Patriots staff?
Yeah, because I mean, this is sort of a. I mean, if everything goes well, this is just sort of a like padding your resume for Bill O'Brien. So I don't if they do hire him, I don't see him here past 2 years.
Yeah, that's a good question, Patty, and that was thanks for the call. I think that's why when we were talking about Sean Jefferson and Keenan McCardell as kind of waiting in the wings with O'Brien, bridging that gap. Now, could it be Caley?
How long is he going to wait?
Right.
They already made him wait this year,
and he's been on staff for 8 years already.
I mean, in theory, yeah, you could do that. I don't know that Caley agrees to that. Honestly, I don't know that O'Brien agrees to that. Having the next guy right there over his shoulder. To one thing Patty said I would push back on a little bit, that this is just padding his resume for Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien was supposed to get a big-time college football head coaching gig when the season started. He took Bryce Young to the Heisman. That offense was a wagon. Now, they lost a lot of talent in the draft, and you kind of had this epiphany the other night. I'd been trying to tell you about it. Alabama's offensive personnel this past year, like the players, wasn't what it's typically been.
No.
Love Jahmyr Gibbs. I think he can play. The wide receivers, that chain of going, all the way back to really Julio Jones under Saban, that run of wide receivers, they lost a couple guys in the draft. Aggie Hall transferred to Texas, dried up a little bit. But the numbers weren't there. The production wasn't there. The success wasn't there. This isn't Bill O'Brien padding his resume. This is him trying to get a reset.
It's an interesting thing about Alabama's offense, and you and I are going to keep hammering this if they do make this hire and they hire Bill O'Brien. And I know people are going, you're making excuses for him. It's Alabama. I have never seen. I watch Alabama tape for the last 3 or 4 years in the draft season every single year. They got 17 guys, right, that you're watching: wide receivers, linemen, quarterbacks, obviously with Mac, running backs.
Right.
I watch them every offseason. I watch Alabama 100 times on offense. I have never seen an Alabama receiving corps so slow in the 4 years that I've really seriously been doing this.
So let me ask you this.
They have no speed at receiver comparatively speaking.
Right. When you watched Alabama's offense, did it remind you of the Patriots 22 offense at all?
In terms of that, yes.
Well, not just the whole thing was built around Jahmyr Gibbs at running back.
Yeah.
Like, they used Jahmyr Gibbs like the Patriots used Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah,
if he wasn't creating the play, like Cameron Latu, the tight end, had a couple nice plays.
Yeah, he's kind of Hunter Henry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Beyond that, it wasn't Bryce Young's fault. It was. I mean, he was hurt for part of the year. So in that sense, I don't know that he was 100%, but it did. Now, again, that's because of the personnel. I don't think that's Bill O'Brien deciding to do that. They tried to throw the ball early. They couldn't do it. So they just built the whole thing around Gibbs.
It's crazy to watch that because when you see, for example, I have a million cut-ups of Bill O'Brien stuff for hopefully I'm already prepared for when they make this hire, right?
It's just
to
being
write
ahead
the,
of things.
To write the column.
You have stuff prepared for the other guys too, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
have to get in
You're
on
just prepared.
Jefferson. And, well, I guess Jefferson, I have all my Cliff folder, which will be all Jefferson stuff as well. But with O'Brien, when you pull clips from the 21 Bama offense,
Yeah.
and then you pull clips from the 22 Bama offense, it's like a totally different team, right? I mean,
Right.
it just Bryce Young's still there.
Well, they lost so much talent.
Yeah, so that receiving core is not. I was watching their film against Ole Miss from this past season. The Ole Miss secondary was covering their receivers no problem. When's the last time that you could say that an Ole Miss defense could keep up with Alabama like in
Hey, now,
in that type of speed game?
they
Come on.
actually had some ballers in the secondary. I can't remember. They have one corner that I like that he's not eligible. But yeah, you're right. I'm just trying to flex some college football stuff. You are right.
Yeah, it was tough to watch at times. All right, so that we got a couple questions here as
Okay.
well on the email that about Doug Marrone. You know, how likely is it that they can pull him out of New Orleans? I think it's likely because of the relationship that he has with O'Brien. Right? If O'Brien is the coordinator here,
Right.
Apparently they go way
They were
back.
roommates. I heard.
I think it's like
Maz
I think it's
writing about this.
the wives were roommates.
The wives were roommates,
Yes.
but they also apparently coached together at the Coast Guard Academy.
Who knows?
Hey, I've
go
called.
way back.
I have
That's all I
called
know.
Coast Guard Academy football. They run the triple option.
They go way back. But if you're bringing in a guy like Marrone to be the line coach, then Adrian Clem is out, right? Like Adrian Clem's not going to come here and give up all those titles
Right.
at Oregon to be the assistant offensive line
Well,
coach.
unless it's one of those things where, again, like I said, that Clem's the offensive line coach and Marrone is just this other sort of guy that's in the room.
Or like the Michael Lombardi role or the Bielema role. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I keep
possible.
going back to that Bielema role because it feels comparable.
I think that too, but if that report is true that Bill was in New Orleans to talk to Doug Marrone,
Yeah,
then something tells me that there is maybe Bill needs that offensive consultant, right? Bill's a defensive guy. We know that. So maybe
Right.
he's looking at Marrone as sort of this offensive guy that's been in offense for 100 years and knows the ins and outs of the coaching cycle and all that type of stuff. So it's definitely possible. But that's the news of the hour right now. The Patriots officially did interview Bill O'Brien for their offensive coordinator role. And as Alex and I have been saying, if all these other interviews are just to build a staff for Bill O'Brien, then everything sort of falls into place and all the dominoes
Then this
make
is
a lot of
awesome.
sense.
Yeah, then this is as good as you could have hoped for.
All right, I want to change gears here. And if there's any more offensive coaching staff, OC stuff, we're definitely going to get into it. But we want to get to positional needs. We didn't have.
Didn't you say there were questions?
There was a couple of
That
them.
was it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you want to call in 855-PATS-500 again is the phone number. I want to get into these positional needs, kind of pivot here from the coaching staff to the roster, because we're talking so much about the coaching staff all over the place on Patriots.com that I don't feel like we're talking a whole lot about the roster.
Well,
right?
I mean,
it's great to have good coaches, but you have to have good
But let's
players,
bridge
too.
that. And we kind of talked about it before. At least on the offensive side of the ball, isn't who they hire going to somewhat dictate the personnel?
I would hope so. And I mean that as in I would hope that they are going to give him the power to dictate some of the personnel. I understand Bill O'Brien's track record with personnel in Houston was horrible. I mean, the DeAndre Hopkins
Right.
trade probably got him fired. I get that, but I still trust Bill O'Brien more than I trust their current brain trust to
Well,
draft
saying-
offense. I'm sorry.
We've talked about, and I don't think it's their number one need. I think it's number 3.
yeah.
They need that big number 1 receiver that's going to dictate coverage
Don't
and
give
all
away
that.
your list.
Here's my point.
Yes.
The guy that O'Brien's going to want might be different than the guy McCardell wants or
Right,
Jefferson
sure.
wants, right? And if they're going to run
Yeah.
different schemes, they might want different guys.
And maybe that's a part of, I think, the lore for me of a guy like Sean Jefferson or Keenan McCardell is actually their scouting ability.
Oh, yeah.
To look at those
This is
guys
what
in
I'm
the
saying.
draft.
Changing the development.
Right.
And look, if I'm in the room doing these interviews with Bill and whoever else is in there, I would assume Bill's in there.
Yeah.
One of the first questions I'm asking is, all right, we've determined we need to go get Mac Jones, the guy. It's the 3rd year. We want our A.J. Brown, our Stephon Diggs.
Right.
Who do you like offensive coordinator candidate.
Right.
There's no right.
If I was the offensive
there's no
coordinator
right or wrong
candidate,
answer.
If I was the offensive
all right,
coordinator,
go ahead. I'll interview you.
If I was the offensive coordinator candidate, I'd flip the script and I'd say, who do you like? Because no offense, you're the one with the bad track record, right? Like I'm Keenan McCardell. I've got Justin Jefferson. I can't remember their other receiver's name who's actually been
KJ Osgood.
He's
Osgood,
Osborne or
I
whatever.
know it's Osgood, isn't it? KJ Osgood.
I don't know. We're terrible. That he's developed into a nice player. I think some of the Cardinals receivers...
It is KJ Osborne.
Yeah, I think some of the Cardinals receivers outside of DeAndre Hopkins, take it or leave it, but I think some of those guys have potential. Rondell Moore, if he can stay healthy, certainly has potential. So, I think those guys all have better track records, no offense, than the Patriots.
No,
team.
but my point is, like, they might all say different guys, right? And I'm going to, all right, well, I'm just... Let's say, all right, because this is with the Cardinals. Let's say Sean Jefferson sits down and says...
I'm bringing DeAndre,
and he gives his list. And then you talk to Bill O'Brien, who has the history, right, with DeAndre Hopkins, and says, I think, and he's been in Alabama, I want to go get Jerry Jeudy.
Right.
You're going to sit there and discuss that, right?
Yeah.
And then if they both get hired, so I think that you have to talk about the staff first because you need to know what the plan is going to be before you can start plugging players into that plan. We can, of course, do needs, but I'm just saying I think
that's a big thing
because intertwined.
I think that we talk a lot, especially me, talk so much about scheme and concepts and things like that. But at the end of the day, too, this coaching staff and they got to make the players work too, right?
Right.
It's not just about, well, what's your system and what do you want to run and conceptually what do you believe Mac Jones would be good at? Like it goes beyond that too to the other positions as well. All right, let's go 5-1. We didn't do this last week and I regretted it. So I want to go 5-1. We're going to leave the best for last, or the number one need that we both have for last. So we ranked them 1 through 5. I think you wrote a piece that was like every single position group.
I didn't do. No, I did I had my 10-point.
Your 10-point
off-season plan, full plan from coaching through the draft. 98.5 The Sports Hub.
So I have positional need coming out tomorrow that is has more than just 5.
Matt Dolph did positional needs on 98.5 The Sports Hub.com.
But here we're going to do 1 through 5 just for time purposes.
5 through 1. 5 through 1.
5 through 1. Excuse me. My number 5 need on my list here for the Patriots is inside linebacker, off-ball linebacker. So I understand that they like Juwan Bentley and I like Juwan Bentley. I think Juwan Bentley has a role that is always going to be in Bill Belichick's defense, the hard-hitting Mike.
Sure.
That's going to forever exist in a Bill Belichick defense. Now, according to Next Gen, they have gotten more zone heavy since 2019. They just that pendulum, it just continues to swing towards zone coverage.
Yep.
And now this past season, they were 64% zone, which in the Next Gen era is the most zone they've ever played under Bill Belichick. Now, a lot of that, I think, has to do with the fact of who their corners are, right? And they don't feel confident. They don't have a Gilmore. They don't have a Law. They don't have a Revis. They don't have a Talib. They don't have that number one corner that he has Jamar Chase. He has Stephon Diggs that they can really rely on and trust on in that role. But I also just think that this is the league now. More split safety coverage, more zone coverage. You're playing Josh Allen. You're playing Burrow. You're playing Miami. Like, you can't just sit in man against those teams all the time. You got to mix it up. You got to do some different things. You got to play softer, quite frankly. If you try to go toe-to-toe in the ring with Tyreek Hill for 4 quarters when Tua's healthy, you're going to get burnt eventually. That's just the nature of the beast. So I think zone is a thing that's going to continue to happen. And I look at inside linebacker, and every offseason we talk about speed at linebacker, but if they're going to be 64% zone, until at least they find that golden goose corner, they need to be more athletic at that spot, because Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai, they did their best. But if you're going to be a truly dynamic zone coverage defense, then you have to have speed and range at linebacker. You just do. And the name I'm going to give you is another take of mine with this offseason. I think the one thing that you can take away from the 2021 free agency spending spree for the Patriots is that I would rather pay top of market money to top of market players than pay top of market money to the Nelson Aguilars and the Jonnu Smiths of the world just because you need a tight end.
You need them, yeah.
So the guy that I look at in this free agency class that I think fills a need to a degree, but also would just make the team better, is Tremaine Edmonds from Buffalo.
I mean, yeah.
If he becomes a free agent in Buffalo, they could make it work. But let's face it, they got a lot of mouths to feed in Buffalo.
He's up, Poyer's up.
Yeah.
Allen's extension's about to kick in.
Someone's going to be the odd
Yeah.
man out. And Milano's an all-pro player this year, right? He
Right.
just got first-team all-pro. So Tremaine Edmonds still is 250, 255 pounds. He's 6'4", 250. I think he's a freak.
Yeah.
He's got that athletic freakishness to him, a little like Jamie Collins in that respect in terms of the body type and the athleticism off the charts. I just think that that's the type of player that I would rather pay Tremaine Edmonds the bag than pay the bag to a wide receiver just because it's a bigger need, right? Or a
Right.
corner, Marcus Peters, right? Just because
Right.
it's a bigger need. So that's where I'm at off-ball linebacker. What's your number 5 need?
My number 5 need is safety, specifically deep safety. I think
Yeah.
that Devin McCourty kind of laid the breadcrumbs as the guy who might be ready to walk away. And I don't think people realize how important that deep safety role is in the Patriots defense, even if they are going to be more zone. I don't think they're going to shift that drastically.
Yeah.
So getting a guy who can play that center field, who has experience there, maybe, I mean, you can get a guy who's done both, but not a guy who's just a purely box safety, right? So I mentioned Poyer's contract is up, Jesse Bates, those are the 2 top safeties.
Right.
Like if you're going to pay top of the market to replace Devin McCourty, and this is a spot you might not be able to address in the draft. Because in college football, there really aren't a ton of true free safeties anymore.
Yeah, it's a problem.
Everybody plays everything, right?
And a lot of these college teams, I mean, in college, when you watch college film, except the SEC, because that's basically
Right.
NFL light. But when you watch like the Pac-12, it's quarters. The whole game is quarters.
Right.
They sit in quarters and they keep the top on the defense, and that's split safety.
Right.
And you see a lot of split safety shells in the college game, and now it's trickling up to the NFL.
So, again, Bates and Poyer are interesting in free agency. If it's a spot that they feel like they can coach up and they can maybe go second tier, I look at a guy like Von Bell.
Yeah.
Taylor Rapp's a guy that just seems like the kind of
I
player
thought he
they
was
would
in
like.
the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's special teams experience as well. Now, you need to coach him up. You need help. Maybe you draft a guy to compete, but they can't spend top dollar everywhere. I know the cap can be
Right.
manipulated, but at the end of the day, there is a soft limit. But I think free safety, if Devin leaves, is a very understated need. I'm a little surprised they didn't get ahead of it. Last year was a sneaky good year for deep safeties in the draft. What's his name in Detroit, who picked off Rodgers 3 times this year from Illinois? Kirby Joseph.
We were on Kirby
I
Joseph.
thought
Yeah.
I thought he was like the next Devin McCourty. I'm looking at him like this is a Devin McCourty kind
He's
of
got
player.
size too. He's a big
Yeah,
guy, good range.
But
Syracuse, right?
Illinois,
Illinois.
right colors.
Right
You had the
colors.
colors, yeah.
Colors.
You had the
Colors
colors.
throw me
You had
off.
the approximate rank in your
Yeah.
conference, but yeah.
Yeah. So
Bielema guy too. So, there you
So
go.
number 4 for me is free
Yeah.
safety. So
Okay.
we're speaking the same language.
Okay.
I look at Jesse Bates and I say, if that guy doesn't get re-upped by Cincinnati, it's the same as Tremaine. I would rather pay Jesse Bates,
Right.
Because I know that he's a stud. I know he's a great player at his position. I think he would be great here. He can play center field. And I also look at it and they've done this in the past, and I think they got away from it a little bit 2 free agencies ago because they're just throwing money around. But in the past, they would rather pay the less premium position a little bit more of affordable deal,
Right.
but get the best player, right? So instead of paying, I go back to corner and like Marcus Peters and some of the other free agent corners that are out there. Instead of paying those guys top dollar corner money, which is 15, 16 million, JC Jackson level contracts.
Yeah.
Jesse Bates is going to come in at like 11 or 12 because safety isn't deemed as a premium position compared to corner. But as you just broke down, and I agree with everything you said, the importance of that role in this defense is different than other defenses. Post safety in this defense is a premium role because you are time and time again going to be the last line of defense. And you are also the primary help to multiple people on the field. And their entire coverage system is predicated on funneling outside leverage, man coverage corners, funneling receivers into the middle of the field help. Like that's their entire defensive structure in man, whether it's robber or whether it's man free. When it's man free, it's even more exacerbated on the free safety because they'll play man free and then they'll rush 5, right? They use that 5-0 rush package. When you get into that, you have no robber. So it's the free safety in the middle of the field is literally the only help guy anywhere on the field. If your corners are not getting great free safety help, then they're screwed. They're screwed because you're making them cover the whole field one-on-one. If you listen to like Stephon Gilmore talk about this in 19, I thought that he talked about this a ton really eloquently. He was able to eliminate routes from his mind because he knew Devin had his
Right.
help, right? So he would say, from this alignment, I'm not going to worry about a post because I know if he runs a post that Devin's going to be there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to sit on a vertical and I'm going to sit on something underneath, right? And I'm going to play trail and I'm going to be underneath the receiver. And that's, if you watch like his interceptions from that season, half of them are in underneath trail technique.
Right.
Because he just knows that Devin is over the top and he knows he's not going to get beat vertically because of that. So that role is just extremely vital to everything that they do. And if Devin does retire, I would love to see them back up the Brinks for Jesse Bates. I think that he's the perfect transition. And I look at Cincinnati. We're probably going to talk about T. Higgins. Sorry, Trags, but they don't got deep pockets in Cincinnati.
No.
And that roster is loaded. So now we're getting to the point where some of those guys are coming up and they can't afford to keep everybody because they're going to have to pay Joe Burrow $50. They're going to have to pay Jamar Chase $30. And then you start to think about paying some of the other guys, right? So that's going to be a big thing. All right. Did you give number 4 yet? No, you didn't. What's number 4?
Corner, specifically big corner. Not a slot guy, not 5'8", 5'10". The number I've set is 6'1" or taller because I like some of the
6'1" or taller.
I like the corners they have. I do. You know, Jonathan Jones, a free agent. We'll see what happens with him. Jack Jones, 5'11". He's your tallest corner signed beyond 2023. Jalen Mills entering the final year of his contract. You're going to have to go through the Bengals, all 6'1" and taller. I think the Raiders are probably going to turn things around. That's a team with a lot of big receivers. You saw how that height tested them this year. The Bills have a lot of bigger receivers. As good as their guys are across the board, again, I like John Jones, I like Jack Jones, I like Marcus Jones. 5'11" and shorter, all of them. At a certain point, size is size. Marcus Jones is out there running step for step with T. Higgins in Week 16. But at the end of the day, Joe Burrow just throws a jump ball, and that's all she wrote. There's nothing Marcus Jones can do about that.
Right.
And there's a couple guys they could get in free. I think adding a veteran, too. Like, if you can give me like a 6'1", 6'2" veteran on a one-year deal who can be like an older voice in a young room, give them some support on the outside against those bigger teams. That's guys like James Bradbury, a guy like Rock Ya-Sin, right?
I love James Bradbury.
I think in this draft, I don't know how much you've dug into Kansas State, Evan. They did play Alabama in the Sugar Bowl.
Yes, I watched that tape.
Julius Brents, 6'4",
Go ahead.
6'4", fluid hips.
Yeah.
Y'all remember how I was into Tyreek Woolen last year?
Here
Not
we go.
the same guy.
Alex
not the same guy.
Tyreek Woolen.
But this is a similar thing where you just don't find guys built like him.
Yeah.
And I don't know that his technique is perfect, but
they can coach that up.
Right. You just get that guy in the building, something good is going to happen. There's some other big corners I like in this draft. Eli Ricks at Alabama is another one, right? I might keep going. But the one I'm worried about is like what I could see them doing. There's a guy, Evan, I've talked to you about him off the air, named Trey Hodges Tomlinson.
Yes.
He's LaDainian Tomlinson's nephew. He plays at TCU. He was
Isn't he just Marcus Jones?
He was named I forget the name of the award. He was college football's corner of the year this year. He was excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Played exclusively on the boundary. He's 5'8".
Hey, it's Marcus Jones.
And I'm worried they're going to look at him and say, we just turned Jonathan Jones into a boundary corner. We just turned Marcus Jones into a boundary corner. I think Trey Hodges Tomlinson is really good. He's going to be a 4th-round pick because of his size, 3rd or 4th-round pick. I think he's an incredible player. Let somebody else do that. They need, like, specifically size at the position.
Yeah, so we're like one off because I have corner at 3.
Well, so I know why we're one off because I did that thing I do where I get weird with the list. But
God dang it. All right, so I have corner at number 3. Can you just be normal one?
Can you
time
clarify
with your
big
list?
corner?
Yeah, outside corner.
Okay.
Number 3.
Not just outside corner, like outside corner with size.
This draft, I've done a little bit of research so far, Alex. You'll be happy.
But you haven't come across Julius Brents yet.
No, but this draft has size. At corner.
Yeah.
There's plenty of size. What do you think of the Georgia kid? Right,
Keely Ringo.
Yeah, he's gonna be first-round pick, right?
That kid's special. I don't think they're gonna be able to get him. I think he's gonna be a top 10 pick.
Okay.
I think when he tests and all of that, the other guy I should mention here in this. Have you gotten to Cam Smith?
No,
South
from
Carolina.
South Carolina.
So
I know his profile, but
so here's the thing: if I say South Carolina boundary corner,
there you go.
You know exactly. Cam Smith is that like he fit Gilmore, J.C. Horn, like next one in line.
So what about the Oregon kid? Because he's going to be a first-round pick too.
I don't know a ton about Christian Gonzalez. Honestly, I kind of do the Pac-12 last.
You know how I feel about the Pac-12.
You do. So on one hand, they do a lot of zone stuff. Like, they're
Yeah.
a team that actually does get into some of these more complex zone looks. So, like, traditionally, I look at that guy and say, he's coming from a zone system. He's not a fit for the Patriots. But if they are going to run more zone, and he's had some more complex assignments, then it gets interesting.
There's a lot of corners in the Pac-12 in this draft.
Yeah. Well, so
The kid from I keep on saying the kid because I don't know their names well enough yet.
Clark Phillips from Utah.
And Stanford
Well,
has one too,
so
right?
Clark Phillips had some assignments on Jackson Smith and Jigba in that game that you love.
So I actually watched him against Jordan Addison from this
Okay.
past year, and I thought his press reps against Jordan Addison were really, really good.
He had a good game against Jordan Addison.
Now,
Two good
when
games
Jordan
against
Addison played when he was playing off of Jordan Addison, he had problems. But when he was pressed on Jordan Addison, I thought he had some really good film there.
So let's just finish up the first round here. Devin Witherspoon from Illinois is the only one in this group who's going to the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
Another big guy, Brett Bielema guy, Big Ten corner. And then the real one that gets me is Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State.
Yeah.
Because you watch Joey Porter Jr. on defense. You watch Joey Porter Jr. on special teams. You watch Joey Porter
Don't give me
Jr.
the special teams
the way
guy,
he
Alex.
operates on the sideline. No, but I'm saying this guy, the way from
Loves
the
football.
from this, not just loves
Loves it.
football, but from the second he steps out there for warm-ups,
He's ready to go.
it's what the Patriots want.
Yeah.
Big physical corner, plays in the kicking game, is a team leader. But there's the Penn State thing, and Joey Porter Sr. hasn't vocally been the biggest fan of Bill Belichick.
Yeah, that's it's kind of like Asante Samuel Jr.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
if he wasn't like, that's the guy. If it's not for that relation, that's the guy. But we'll see what happens. That's the first round. Ringo, Porter, Gonzalez, Smith, Witherspoon.
So
Phillips.
I assume that when you see a Georgia corner projected in the top 15, that he's probably going too high for the Patriots to get their hands on with Ringo. I assume he'd probably be a top 10 guy. But yeah, I liked what I saw out of the Utah corner against Addison. That's what I'm trying to do this year, especially with wide receivers and corners, is watch them against top competition. Because sometimes I think you get coaxed into watching guys against scrubs and they look like all pro players. But you really got to take the film of them against other premier talents. And that's what I really liked about watching that Utah kid against Addison.
Can I give you one more then? It's
Yes.
kind of sleeper if they want to go mid-round.
Yes.
DJ Turner from Michigan, 6'2", multi-year starter. He's got those playoff reps. He's got those reps against Ohio State.
Okay, right.
So I haven't gone through all of them. He's played fairly well in those games. He had some reps on Quentin Johnson national championship.
Yeah.
He looked pretty good.
I'm trying to get my hands on the national championship game to
Okay.
see what Ringo did against Quentin Johnson, because obviously he had a decent game because Quentin Johnson didn't get the ball, but maybe that was just a protection, right? I don't know if Quentin Johnson was getting open, but
He was lined up on Quentin Johnson a good amount. But you could still watch them run down the field,
yeah,
even if
right.
you know.
Well, I'm interested to see it from both perspectives, right?
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
maybe it changed my mind about Johnson. Okay, so I'm at number 3 with outside corner.
Yeah.
So I'm outside corner, free safety, off-ball linebacker.
Yeah.
You're free safety, outside corner. What's number 3?
Wide receiver. That
Yeah.
big number one. I mean, we don't need to do a ton
We're
of this.
literally just one off
right.
on this.
Hopkins, Jerry Jeudy,
Right.
Mike Evans, the guy that, and there was a report from Mike Giardi that almost said this word for word, that there's people in the building that believe the guy who's going to dictate coverage. Other teams are going to have to double him. They're going to have to shade coverage towards him. Devontae Parker can play. Everybody knows how I feel about Kendrick Bourne. I'm incredibly high on him. Those are guys that are going to win one-on-one more often than not. You need to guarantee that they are getting one-on-one coverage assignments more often than not. How do you do that? You go get a number one wide receiver that demands multiplayer coverage, snap in and snap out. You want to really unlock this offense? You want to get them back pushing top 5 in scoring like they were in 2021? You go add that guy.
So that's number 2 because you have your little trick.
I think
there
you
at
know
the
what I
top.
did too.
I don't know yet
'Cause I
but
talk like this all the time.
I'm not gonna like it. Number 2 on my list, or number 3 on my list. Excuse me. Where's it 2? I don't remember. Two. Jesus, you're killing me with your list over there. Number 2 on my list is wide receiver. I just think you said it perfectly about, if you're really trying to make it work with Mac Jones, then you got to get him a guy. And I just look at the landscape of the AFC, and I look at the whole league. The Chiefs have Kelsey, the Bills have Diggs, the Bengals have Chase. You go to the other side, the Eagles have A.J. Brown, the Niners have Debo and George Kittle and CMC and every single other freaking number 1 receiver under the sun, right? This is the league now. And I think that there was some merit once upon a time to them not wanting to overpay or overdraft that position, right? I think there was some merit to it, especially early on in the Patriots years when teams like the Lions were busting out on receivers in the top 10 left and right? Like there was some truth to it. But nowadays, if you don't have that guy, then you're not going to win a Super Bowl. I just don't think you can win a Super Bowl without one. And you look at sort of the last 3 or 4 just matchups in the Super Bowl, not even the winner. Last year it's Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase, right? Like they each had a guy on their roster. That's the league now. And the Patriots don't have a guy. They don't have a guy that
Patriots are the last team to make the Super Bowl without one of those guys.
And they had Gronk.
And they had Gronk. That's And
Edelman, who won Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't even know if they didn't have it, right?
You're right. I take that back.
So I look at the Patriots offense right now, and what I see is an offense that when defenses coaches, okay, we're on to the Patriots. It's Tuesday, right? We're game plan meeting. Who on the Patriots passing offense are you saying, oh, we got to take that guy out? We got to roll coverage over there.
Not even that. Not even we have to. It's how are we?
Yeah.
We can't do just what we do. We need to do something different. We need to create a whole new scheme to take that guy away.
We got to roll coverage. We got to one double, right?
Right.
Whatever it is. And I think the problem is that on top of the fact that the Patriots just don't have that guy in the Tuesday meeting that anybody cares about, when they get into the Tuesday meeting, they say, well, they don't really have that guy, but like Jacoby Myers is that guy, right? Like they're trying to make Jacoby Myers that guy. So now all of a sudden on third down, Jacoby Myers is getting double teamed.
Blanketed, yeah.
Right. And then now Matt Jones is going to somebody else, and Jacoby's even out of it. So Jacoby's punching above his weight because he's not that guy, right? And now the Patriots the whole thing is just thrown off. They do not have a Tuesday player. That's Michael Lombardi-ism, right? A Tuesday player, who's the guy that you circle on the roster. They do not have a Tuesday player on offense, and it's not the quarterback right now. So they don't have a Tuesday player, period. If they don't have that, I don't think that you're ever going to be an elite offense. I don't care if Bill O'Brien's your coach, if Sean McVay's your coach, if Kyle Shanahan's your coach, whoever. You're just not going to get there as an offense. So enough thinking around with it. Like we've gone year after year after year, really since 2018 when Gronk and Edelman started to slow down or Gronk retired, right? We've been going 5 years running on this. There's something that Matt Groh said, and if we get a chance to talk to Matt Groh, hopefully we will. Maybe when we're going, our big show announcement, we'll get a chance to talk to Matt Groh. He said last year he agreed with that premise.
Yeah.
And the most important thing that I think that he said in his answer to that question was that you can't sit back and wait for the guy anymore. Right? Like you
got to go get him, right?
And I know it was a small trade up, but they did end up trading up from 54 to 50 to get Tyquan Thornton last year in the second round. I think Matt Groh recognizes it, and I think that he sees it would be worth it to us to trade a premium asset for DeAndre Hopkins or Jerry Jeudy or T. Higgins or whoever it may be. The one guy in the draft, though, at 14, and I know you always make fun of me for this because I get attached to guys. I watch them.
You have a little recency bias.
I get recency bias.
Evan's favorite player in the draft is whatever player he watched most recently.
Okay. With that being said, Jackson Smith and Jigba can play.
He can.
He's incredible.
He can.
He's really, really good. And the reason why I like him so much is he's like if Julian Edelman was a first-round prospect, right? Like he's got that slot shiftiness. He's always in the right place. He's durable. He's dependable. He's all those types of things. And I don't want to hear about the hamstring and this. Like he sat out this year because he didn't need to play. Okay, and they like I understand that rubs some people the wrong way, but to me, I feel like that's part of the problem with the Patriots draft strategy sometimes is that they shy away from guys like JSN who don't play because they don't have to, because they want the gamer, right? Like they want the lunch pail guy. They want the gym rat. sometimes you just got to take the best player, right? You just got to take the best talent. What I like so much about him, though, is that he's a middle of the field player. He's not the boundary guy where you have a quarterback that isn't toolsy, that isn't a physical freak, and now you're asking him to throw 60-yard bombs because that's what your number one guy is good at, right?
Right.
He's Mac Jones's binky and a half. And Dante Scarnecchia has talked about this every single time Dante gets in front of a mic. He always says the thing that the Patriots need isn't the stud outside receiver. They need Wes Welker, right? They need Julian Edelman. They need the guy that stirs the drink. Jackson Smith-Njigba stirs the drink. Like, that's the guy that's going to catch 125 balls out of the slot for the Patriots. I just love that guy at 14. If the veteran market doesn't break, I still am number one trade, right? Like, I want to trade for one.
So you're team Jerry Jeudy then in terms of that market.
I'm coming around to more Jeudy, yeah.
Because he'd be closer to what you just described. Like, he runs out of the slot as much as he runs off the boundary.
Yeah, I just worry about, like, I don't want them to basically, like, T. Higgins to me is just like better Devontae Parker, and I just don't know if that guy is really what would make Mac the best.
Right.
I think the efficient, short and intermediate jitterbug receiver, which is what Jackson Smith-Njigba is, I think that guy thrives in this offense with Mac Jones. Get the ball out of his hands, right, quickly, and have his brain be doing the heavy lifting, not his arm.
Right.
And I think that's what Smith-Njigba can really bring to the table. And I would love it at 14. If he's there at 14, if he runs at the combine, it means he's going to run faster than we all think. That's the big knock on him is he doesn't have breakaway game speed. But if he runs at the combine, it means he's going to run under a 4.5. And if he runs under a 4.5, I don't know if he makes it to 14.
No shot.
We're going to play this game again, right?
Shot,
Who's going to make it?
Jordan Davis last year. Remember,
Yeah.
I texted you. I was like, I can't wait for Jordan Davis to run under 5 tonight. And you thought I was kidding.
He's spectacular.
You want a little Patriots adjacent coaching news real quick before we
Sure.
finish this up? The Dolphins have fired Josh Boyer, Steve Gregory, and Steve Ferentz.
So
Boyer was here as a coach. Gregory was here as a player. Steve Ferentz is the brother of James Ferentz and the son of Kirk Ferentz.
So my guess is that Josh Boyer, I think they might already have too many chefs in the kitchen, and bringing a guy like Boyer back might add another chef.
That's right. Yeah, I don't know
Right.
that they need any defensive coaches.
Yeah, and then I think Brian Flores, wherever he lands, could take Josh Boyer with him. But
Although, if they're going to bring in a new free safety, having Steve Gregory teach that guy up.
Josh Boyer's downfall is that he blitzes too much. He's so in love with the blitz, and it's like all he can do, right? And they just didn't have the corners on the outside to be that man heavy.
Yeah.
All right. What's number 2 on your list?
Tackle.
Your rinky-dink list
Tackle.
over there.
Tackle. They need it, and this is why I wouldn't take Njigba at 14.
We would literally have the same list pretty much if you didn't do
if I
something
wasn't
stupid
weird.
at 1.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it. They need a tackle.
Yeah.
Well, not to spoil my number 1. They need 2 tackles. They're going to need 2 tackles.
Oh my goodness. What did
And
you do?
Isaiah Wynn's contract is up. Trent Brown, they save like $6 million if they cut
More
him.
now. Yeah.
Is it more now?
Because so I went down this rabbit hole the other day because Pat's cap Miguel tipped me off to it. Trent Brown hit all of his playing time incentives
Okay.
this year because he didn't get hurt like he normally does.
Right.
So those all hit the cap in 2023. So I believe that Trent Brown's contract is now $11.5 million hit in 2023.
And that all comes off the book if they cut him? Or
Like all of it besides like the down payment.
So call it like about 10 million. Okay,
10
so
million. Yeah.
they're going to need 2 tackles. They can go out and trade for wide receiver, a position they traditionally haven't developed. They develop tackles well. It's a good tackle class in free agency and in the draft.
Yeah.
Quarterback can't do anything if he's on his ass all game.
Right.
Tackle.
Yeah.
This is my second biggest need. You can ask me
Second
number 1 in a
biggest
bit, but I have tackle as number 2 on my list.
Number 1 on my list is tackle.
Okay.
I almost put receiver ahead of it. This is the age-old argument, right? Like
Right.
protection or the receiver. The Bengals went receiver, and it's worked out for them. But I think that Burrow makes it work out, right? The
Right.
fact that Burrow is so inflappable under pressure, I think it makes it work out. So that's why Burrow works for him. I think other teams might have misstepped there and probably should have got, like Miami, for instance. They went Waddle, right? They got the receiver too, and now Tua's in concussion protocol for the 3rd time, right?
The Chiefs early on, too, I would say. I mean, they fixed it since, but the Chiefs early on, yeah.
So I think with the type of quarterback that you have, with his numbers this year under pressure being as terrible as they were, they need to go out and they need to get not just – I'm with you on the volume.
Yeah.
But I want like Matt Light, right? Like I
Right.
want the left tackle that's going to be the left tackle for the next 10 years
Yeah.
on this team. And that I think is going to have to be the 14th overall
Yeah.
pick. So Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson from
Yeah.
Ohio State, and Skwarnski or whatever.
Peter Skoronski.
Skoronski.
And I'm telling you right now, Evan, I think DeJuan Jones gets his name into the first round conversation. Now, he's a right tackle. Well, he can play both. He's primarily a right tackle. But we'll get to number one on my list in a second. There's a way that works.
Yeah. So out of what I've seen, and I started with receivers because they're the most fun.
That's what everybody wants to see.
It's the most fun. But
you've been watching Ohio State so you've
from
seen
what
Paris
I've
Johnson.
seen, I like Broderick Jones the best.
It's a lot to like.
Right. And I think the biggest reason why I like him the best is because his athleticism and his range, I think, is the best out
You've
of
seen
all
those plays where he pulls out when they
Yeah.
run the ball and he goes out to
Yeah,
the edge
he
and blocks the
smokes
corner.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Right.
That's fun.
And I think that type of athleticism in an offense where a lot of your yards are going to be based off a yak, right? And you're talking about screens, you're talking about RPO game, you're
Right.
talking about that type of stuff.
Good RPO tackle.
That I think that athleticism would really help. And he's just a monster. He's
Yeah.
like 6'6" something.
6'5", 315.
So here's the kicker, though, with those types of guys, the 14's pushing it. Like, I don't know if he's going to be there.
I think here's the thing.
Because those types of tackles go top 10, right? Like those types of, I mean, last year was what, like Cross and those guys, they went
Yeah.
like 5, 6, 7, like, right? They were all off the board.
But so a bunch of those guys just went. I don't think there's a lot of teams around the league necessarily looking for a tackle right now. There's 4 guys, maybe 5. A lot of people like Anton Harrison from Oklahoma. I'm not as familiar with him.
Yeah.
But they might not get their pick. But one of those 4 or 5 guys will be on the board at 14. And I think there's at least 3, potentially 5 franchise tackles in this draft.
So,
Right? Like,
yeah,
you like Broderick. I don't know. Have you watched Skoronski at all?
a little bit, but
Okay. I'm not using Paris Johnson because I know you have a thing about Ohio State tackles.
yeah, we can give that take in a
Like,
second.
you like Broderick Jones, but
Yeah.
you can be upset if they end up with Peter Skoronski? Absolutely not. Like,
No, I'm
he's
not going to
still
be
a guy
upset.
that's a
but
potential franchise tackle.
And look, I'm not saying that they should trade 5 picks to move
Right.
up, but like this is one of those drafts where I think you need to be in the conversation of moving up, from 14 to 10, right? Or 14 to 11. Like just leapfrog a team that might be taking your guy.
So you want an interesting thing here? I'm
Yeah.
looking at the board right now. The 3 guys we're talking about, this is the board we use.
Yeah.
They're projected to go 11, 12, 13.
So if you have to go and move up from 14 to 11 to get Broderick Jones or to get
Right.
your guy and make sure you get him, that it's the same thing as moving up from 54 to 50 to get Tyquan
But
last year.
I don't think that, it depends how much they have to give up. The gap between Jones and Skoronski and Johnson isn't so big that you need to sell the farm
Sure.
to get any one of those 3, they should be able to make work.
Yeah.
They should be able to turn into a franchise tackle.
That's fair. So
So-
tackled number 1 on my list.
Yeah.
So I'm tackle, wide receiver,
Yeah.
outside corner, free
Yeah.
safety, linebacker. What's your dumb number 1?
So I'll go 5 to 1. Safety, corner, wide receiver, tackle. Number 1 is punter. No, I'm kidding. You're
almost
about to
just
shut my
walked
mic
out.
off. You're about to shut my mic off.
Walked out.
No.
I was like, how can we mute him right now?
Safety, corner, wide receiver, tackle, and tackle.
You
Because
can't-
I
you're such
can.
a-
Because, Evan, I'll tell you, I did this with corner last year. I
Oh
did this
my
with corner last year. I'll
goodness.
tell you this.
That's almost as bad as putting punter.
Listen.
That's not the game. The game
This is the game because, listen to me. If they
trust them to do
let's
anything
say
right.
let's say free agency started today, and they signed Mike McGlinchey or Orlando Brown. Those are the
Yeah.
top 2 tackles in
Yeah.
free agency. If they made that signing and then we did the list again, I would still have tackle number 1.
That's fair.
So that's why it's 1 and 2, because even if they add a tackle is still the biggest need on the list. Once they add that second, then we get into the other positions. And that's why I said, maybe they really like Orlando Brown. If you're going to tell me that they're going to sign Orlando Brown and draft DeJuan Jones, and Brown's playing on the left side and Jones is playing on the right side,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that works.
Yeah.
That works.
Yeah.
I think that's as good of a plan as McGlinchey's the top right tackle, right?
Right.
That's as good of a plan as if they go Skoronski and McGlinchey,
Yeah.
right? So there's ways they can mix and match it, which is even more reason why I think they don't necessarily need to push to move up. But draft 1, sign 1. That's going to be
That's
one
my
of
thing
the
as well.
catchphrases of the offseason for this show. What do you think we're going to call in? People are going to call in. What do you want them to do at tackle? Draft one, sign one. People are going to email in. What do you want them to do at tackle? Draft one, sign one. Draft one, sign one. DOSO. DOSO. That's the motto for the offseason.
I like
Doso.
I like the
Doso at
McGlinchey
tackle.
with the left tackle in the draft. I do.
Okay.
Because McGlinchey's your right tackle,
Yeah.
right? And plug and play at right tackle, and then you get the left tackle who has maybe a little bit of a higher ceiling in the
Sure.
draft, and you go that direction.
But I'm
with
just
it.
saying, like, if they walked away with Orlando
think-
Brown and DeJuan Jones, it's not like, oh my God, what are they doing? They're screwed.
No,
I'm
no,
like,
no.
all right, you have an offensive line.
I just think Orlando Brown worries me because of the weight. That once you pay, is he Trent Brown? Like once you pay a guy like that, who's that big,
or Andre Dillard, and I have concerns about him too. But my point being, like,
I just like McGlinchey. I think he's
some
I
plans
think
can
in
be
San
better than others.
Francisco. I think in San Francisco he was fine,
Yeah.
but I really think that he's been miscast in that system because he's a 6'8", 330-pound right tackle that they're trying to get to run outside zone.
True.
Right, and so like if you get that guy McGlinchey, I'm talking about,
Yeah.
and you put him next to Onwenu and you run gap to that side,
Hey, you're going to run for 12 yards a carry.
right? Like that's just a
But at the same
absolute
time, I would say,
bulldozer.
what's Onwenu? 6'2", 365?
They list him at like 340.
All
now.
right. DeJuan Jones is 6'8", 360.
Oh yeah, no, it's
You put those two guys next
Yeah,
to each other,
it's-
you are going to run. You can run that QB power with Mac
Yeah,
Jones.
right.
You're going to run forever behind those two guys.
Okay, so yeah, we're both on the same page with tackle. We got a few more calls, and then we'll make the big announcement.
All right.
All right. Mason, what's going on? Mason, you're on the air. You there?
It's not. All right.
No, Mason. All right, we can call back in Mason,
yeah.
and so we got a question in the email.
Okay.
And then we got one more phone. Not trying to sway from your personnel talk. Yes, thank you. We needed to get that out there. But mentioned today, Harbaugh mentioned today that Lamar Jackson would be involved in their OC hiring process. Do you think Mac is sitting in on the Patriots OC interviews or has some input or anything like that? Do you think Mac should have input on the OC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know that he's going to be sitting in the meetings, but we all know which way he's going to go.
Right.
Right. He's going to want O'Brien.
Yeah.
So, and you know what? After a rough year, they're going to hire O'Brien anyway. Hey, Mac, who do you want? Just ask him before. You know you're going to make that hire anyway.
I have no problem with Mac. Like, let's just say little off-season project for you, Mac. Just make you us a list. Like, who's your three guys,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't mean that they're going to listen to anything that he says, but it would be nice to know where the quarterback's head's at.
Sure.
I don't think that he has any sway, and I don't think that he necessarily should, especially after the year that he just had. But I think that he should. Like, he's not Lamar Jackson. He's not.
Right.
He's not a
Lamar's
former
won
league
an
MVP.
yeah.
Right. So
Meanwhile, he's got is he going to be in Baltimore for whoever he wants
That's
them
what
to hire?
Harbaugh said today, that he's their quarterback. So they're trying to full court press it. My guess is that Greg Roman was and Lamar had grown apart, and that marriage was not good. And so they moved on from Greg Roman today to free that up. So maybe they're trying to make that happen in Baltimore. I want Mac to have a voice. I don't want him to have a say. How about that? Is that
Sure. Yeah, that's
okay?
fair.
All right, Mason, you back?
What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
Hey.
Good. How are you?
So I'm usually a weapons with a Z guy, admittedly, but I do actually think that we should take a tackle this year in the first round. But I actually wanted to talk about a guy in the second round that I think would actually be a steal, who is my personal wide receiver one this year, which I know that's going to make some people say, but
Can I guess who it is?
Rashee Rice out of
Oh,
SMU.
all right, I would have been wrong.
Dominant at the catch point. He's going to be a 4'4" guy, easy at 6'2", 205. He's explosive. And my personal pro comp for him is A.J. Brown. I think he's going to be really special. What would you guys think about somebody like that in the second round if we can get him there?
Our board
Thanks for the
has
question,
him
Mason.
mocked to the Patriots at 46.
There you go. So I think that there is very good depth in this receiver class. And
Oh, yeah.
I know you've been saying this to me for a while. Guys like Zay Flowers, who I think
Yeah.
is where you thought he was going with that.
That's, everybody's like, Zay Flowers isn't a projected first-round
Yeah.
pick, but I think he'd be a steal. If everybody thinks Zay Flowers is a steal, he's not a steal.
Yeah. Josh Downs, right, from North Carolina.
That's my guy.
Yeah.
I love me some Josh Downs.
And then I've heard a lot of buzz from this SMU kid, too. So there's some day two guys for sure.
Can I give you the real wild card in this group?
Yes.
And I don't know how the Patriots are going to feel about him. This goes back to your point of I forget exactly what it was. When you talk about Njigba and taking the guy that doesn't necessarily, the guy who sat out.
Yeah.
So Kayshon Boutte was
From LSU.
was the consensus number one receiver in this class for most of the season. So last year he was great. 2021 he was great. Struggled in 2022, but the offense really struggled in 2022 as a whole. Like, it was kind of a mess there. He announced he was going back to school. Then a couple days later, or this might have all been within like a day or two, they said even though he was going back to school, he wasn't playing in the bowl game. They never called it a suspension.
Yeah.
But the school said he wasn't playing in the bowl game, and then he announced he was going to the draft. And there's been some rumors as to what happened in terms of some off-field stuff, some party-related stuff. I don't want to put anything out there that's not confirmed, but now nobody really knows where to put him. His talent-wise, like, he did at one point look like a wide receiver 1 in the draft, but, he had a down year. He's had this thing. You go back to the 2021 draft, the Patriots took a bunch of guys who were really good 2 years before they were drafted, right? Or guys who are coming off of injuries or whatever. So they have been into that kind of guy. Do they see Boutte? And this is one of those things where there might be stuff off the field that we just don't know.
Yeah.
And that he's going to be sitting there in the 5th round. We're going to be all like, what's happening, right? But are they going to see him as an untouchable? I could just as easily be convinced that they're going to see him as a value pick in the 2nd round. It's going to be really interesting to see how his stock develops.
Yeah, so
I don't know. Have you watched him?
I've watched him live a little bit,
Okay.
but not deep into it yet. But I think what's interesting about this class at wide receiver, and I would say to a degree at corner too.
Yeah.
I think you're going to hear a lot of, it's a deep class, but there's no Jamar Chase, right? Like, it's a deep wide receiver
Right,
class, but there's
right.
no Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, that's next year.
I've
right?
told you what my draft strategy would be. Just draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and tell the
my
league to
God.
deal with it.
That I think you're going to hear a lot of that, but I really think
There's no Sauce Gardner. There's
right.
no, yeah.
But from what I can't speak on the corners, but from what I've seen out of these wide receivers that I've studied so far, I think that's selling some of these guys a little bit short. Like, I don't think that Jackson Smith-Njigba and Jordan Addison are Jamar Chase level prospects, but those guys are number 1 pick, 1st round pick wide receiver prospects every single year, right? Like, every year. I don't think that there's a big difference between Jackson Smith-Njigba in the tape that, Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb and those guys put out a couple years ago, right? Like, that, I think that's my point.
Yeah.
Is those guys, I think, are 1st round picks in 2023 as if they were in 2019. So there might not be a Calvin Johnson, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr. prospect,
Right.
but the Patriots are also not picking that high,
Right.
right? So they don't need that guy.
There's a lot of guys who say, I love his game, but.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
Yes.
A lot of buts.
Arjun?
Yep, I'm here.
Hey,
Tell me how you pronounce your name so I know.
Yeah, so you actually pronounce it, you pronounce my name Arjun.
Arjun.
It's with a J. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. What's up?
All right, so I'll just get quick to my point. So, you guys have been talking a lot about, our draft class and, like, our, sign one, draft one. So I've just been, like, thinking, like, for me personally, like, I hear a lot about these rumors. I know, like, this might be outlandish, but something like Jalen Ramsey or, like, someone like D-Hop, I guess I'll be getting a million questions about that guy. So, like, what do you guys think? Like, as far as, like, where should be, like, what you guys would give up for him? And, like, do you guys really think they're a trade target? And, like,
Okay, yeah, perfect question, Arjun. Corner with Jalen Ramsey. So the Rams, Bill came due. I hate that saying with the NFL,
Yeah.
but quite frankly, that's the truth. Sean McVay's back. Aaron Donald, maybe?
Today he said he's going to be back.
Okay.
He clarified that.
Matthew Stafford, back, but
Who knows with the elbow?
Who knows with
back
the
on the
elbow.
roster.
right. So I don't know. If McVay and Donald are back, I don't think the Rams are in full sell mode yet.
No.
I think they almost have to just go for it again.
Yeah.
They don't really have much of a choice. So
I'll say this too. In terms of Ramsey, he didn't have a great year.
yeah,
He going back
that's
to the
fair.
Super Bowl last year, I mean, he's not looked like that number 1 corner. I wouldn't give up a ton for him.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. And with that contract too, like in this draft class and all of it, pass.
Okay.
Pass.
DeAndre Hopkins. And the Patriots just interviewed Bill O'Brien. Or
This morning, it
In
was
this
Albert
morning.
Breer added some context. The interview took place this morning.
So here's the question that I think everybody's going to ask with Bill O'Brien is that mean you're out on Hopkins because of their divorce in Houston was not pretty? Hopkins has been on the record saying that the drama was a little bit overblown, that it's not as bad as it really was made out to be in some of the stories that came out about it. But at the end of the day, Hopkins is going to have some options, and I don't know if he really wants to be married again with Bill O'Brien.
Right.
With that being said, just take that off the board for a second.
Yeah.
Just in terms of pure draft capital, like what are you giving up for DeAndre Hopkins?
Second round pick and a future top 150. I think that gets it done.
I'm with you on the second round pick.
So here's the thing. His value has been set. He was traded 3 years ago.
That was a horrible trade.
I know it was, but this is how teams look at it. And as bad of a trade as it was, what's happened since? He caught a PED suspension.
Yeah.
Only one of the 3 seasons he's played over 10 games, and he crossed the age 30 barrier.
Yeah.
So even if you say, hey, going off of that trade is wrong because it was so lopsided, you're going to use it as a base one way or the other, and then you bring in all those other factors. That was a second, a fourth, and whatever was left of David Johnson.
Right.
So does a second and a fourth get it done? I think so. Like a second and a future fourth. And I think they got like a fourth or a fifth back or something. Hopkins straight up for this year's second and a 2024 fourth. Yeah, I'll go pick him up from the airport.
Yeah.
I'd do that.
Yeah, I do that as well. 14's totally out of the question.
14, no.
Yeah.
No. That's like, if I really have to give it up to get Jerry Jeudy.
No.
If it's like 14 for like Jeudy and the Broncos second, which is going to be like 30. Like,
right.
I'm saying I'd put it in the conversation. I wouldn't do it straight up.
Yeah.
But I would at least discuss that as an option. That's Jeudy, who's 26.
Right.
And has been healthy and all of that.
Right. Jeudy, I think I would talk about it with Higgins, right? I don't know if I would do it with either, but I would consider
I
it
would
with
put
Higgins.
it, if I'm going to get like a second round pick back and maybe some future picks, like at that point it's 14 for Higgins and it's 14 for Jeudy and the Cardinals called and said, all right, we want 14 for Hopkins. I'm going to say, what else are you going to give me?
Right.
You going to give me whatever pick they have, 10, 11?
And if you're Denver, not to get too down the rabbit hole here, they just gave up everything for Russell Wilson.
They need a pick.
They need a pick.
They need a pick, yeah.
Right. So it's not a horrible path. All right. Eldred, what's up?
Hey, Evan and how y'all doing?
Good.
Hey,
his name's Alex.
That's fine. It's not board.
Yeah, but I wouldn't give a second for Hopkins because of his age. I try to give a third and a fourth.
That's fair.
Because of the age and everything else. I wouldn't give a second.
I just think that's what it's going to take to get it done. I'm not saying that that's the best scenario, but okay, that's fair. It's a fair take.
That's fair take. Okay, my question is, only thing I have a problem with is I like the new offensive guys that they interviewing or whatever. But I'm with you, Evans. If it ain't Bill, if it ain't O'Brien, I don't know about the other guys. I'd be kind of worried about it. And I just be worried about GM when it comes to the draft and picking because of his track record. That's what I'd be worried about. Unless you listen to somebody else this year because how last year went, you still got the same guy drafted. And I don't like that board they always use. This guy the same as that guy. He's a little tear down.
You're preaching to the choir on the draft right now. Thanks for the call, Eldred. We love you.
It's not the same guy picking. They got Matt Groh now.
Cole Strange was not a Matt Groh pick.
But the rest, it feels like a lot changed between their first pick and the rest of the picks.
I know.
It feels like.
I know. I don't necessarily.
Marcus Jones, Jack Jones, Bailey Zappi. We'll see.
Do you know what that all feels to me like though? Is like Marcus Jones went to Houston, right? Bailey Zappi goes to Western. Like, I need the 2021 draft again. I need Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, Ohio State. Like, give me, because if you miss on those guys, then I can explain it, right? Like, I can justify it no matter what.
Right.
Because those guys are name brand 5-star blue chip prospects. When you miss, and I'm not saying they necessarily missed, but when you get a player who's good but not great, which is what I think Cole Strange is right now. Fine, solid guard. But he's not Zach Martin, right? And when you get that type of player, with this team right now where they're at, it doesn't move the needle. It just doesn't move the needle.
But here's what I'd say. They wanted speed. Let's use running back as an example. They wanted speed. The fastest 40 times for running backs where Pierre Strong was the most at South Dakota State.
Yeah.
There was I remember I did this last year. I don't remember the schools, but of the 4 top 40 times, only one was a Power 5 school. You know,
Right.
Say you didn't have a ton of fast corners last year.
Yeah.
Marcus Jones didn't run, but was a guy that was expected to be.
No, Marcus Jones is because that. No,
I
because it
think
worked
what,
out. But
I
because
think
it's a
what
good
they were
pick.
targeting last year, they happened to have to go to small schools to get. I don't think they targeted small schools.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I go back, and I know that my point of bringing up the 18 draft is
Yeah.
because even though it didn't work out, taking the 2 Georgia guys at the top was justifiable, right? Like it
Sure.
made sense. You picked 2 guys from the Georgia team that went to the national championship game, that just balled out in the college football playoff, and it makes sense. Yes, they drafted the wrong Georgia running back. Yes, Isaiah Wynn didn't pan out, but the pick in the moment at the time was justifiable.
Okay, but we both loved Trevor Penning last year. We both said
yeah.
if they took Trevor Penning, that would work.
But that was at a premium position.
Went to Northern Iowa.
At least we're at a premium position now. At least we've moved from guard
Putting
to
a
tackle.
lot of qualifiers on this.
Well, I have 2 qualifiers. Premium position from a Power 5 school. I don't think that should be that hard.
All right.
All right, we have to make the show announcement because we have to wrap. Big show announcement. Here we go. Drum roll, please. Last week we found out that the Patriots will be coaching at the East-West Shrine Bowl out in Las Vegas. Last year they drafted 4 players from the Shrine Bowl. Tyquan Thornton, Jack Jones, Pierre Strong, Sam Roberts, and they picked up a couple UDFAs from the Shrine Bowl as well.
To Eric King and LeBrian Ray.
Catch-22 and myself and Alex are going to the Shrine Bowl. We're going to be out there with the team next week for all 4 days of practice.
4
I think
days.
it is
4
4 days of
yep.
practice. We're going to do live shows from Las Vegas after watching Shrine Bowl practices
So each day.
And we're going to talk about prospects. We're going to talk about the coaching staff and what we see because the Patriots, other than DeMarcus Covington, are all going to be there as well.
So is Covington not going? Because there's only 1 day of overlap.
He potentially could be
He could
going
be
to
there
bowl.
at the beginning of the week.
So Catch-22 goes on the road. Catch-22 goes to the Shrine Bowl, and we'll have you completely covered out in Las Vegas. This is our first time traveling together. I was trying to think about this morning.
No, we traveled together at our first
No,
job together.
I know, but I think this is our first time traveling together since 2019.
Yes.
So Catch-22 at the Shrine Bowl. We will see. You'll hear from us from there, from Las Vegas.
We'll have
but
a
that's
show.
big announcement.
Are we doing a show next week?
Yeah, we're
Thursday?
doing next
So
week,
we'll
I
have
think.
next week. We'll preview the rosters.
All right. Until then, signing off, Alex Barth, Evan Lazar. See you at the Shrine Bowl, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.